Imagine the whole world at war. Not a border dispute, not one army against another. Every ocean, every continent, factories, farms, families, all pulled into a single conflict. Between 1939 and 1945, more than 70 million people died. That was 1 out of every 30 people alive. How does something like this happen? Not overnight. It happens step by step by step. This is the story of World War II and the world it left behind. To understand this war, start with the one before it. The First World War ended in 1918. 10 million soldiers were dead, and the winners wanted someone to pay. In a palace outside Paris, they handed Germany the bill, the Treaty of Versailles. Accept the blame. Give up land. Pay sums no country could pay. Germans called it a humiliation, and the young German democracy carried that anger like a stone on its back. Then in 1929, the world's economy collapsed. The Great Depression closed banks and factories from New York to Berlin. Millions lost work, savings, and faith. Faith that voting, compromise, patience could feed their children. And when people lose faith in slow answers, they start listening to loud ones. Versailles was the kindling. The Depression was the wind. The world was waiting for a spark. The loud answers had names. In Italy, Benito Mussolini promised to rebuild the Roman Empire and marched his followers into power in 1922. In Japan, military leaders dreamed of an empire in Asia, and in 1931, their army seized Manchuria in northern China. 6 years later, they invaded the rest. And in Germany, a failed artist turned politician promised to undo Versailles, restore German greatness, and blamed the nation's pain on scapegoats, above all, Europe's Jews. In January 1933, Adolf Hitler became Chancellor. Within months, Germany's democracy was gone. Hitler rearmed in open defiance of the treaty. He marched troops into the Rhineland. He absorbed Austria. Each time, Britain and France did nothing. Not because they were fools, because they remembered the last war and would give almost anything not to fight another. At Munich in 1938, they gave him a piece of Czechoslovakia for a promise of peace. He was not interested in peace. Appeasement taught him one lesson. No one would stop him. On the 1st of September 1939, German tanks rolled into Poland. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war. The Second World War had begun. Germany fought in a new way. Blitzkrieg, lightning war, tanks punching through lines, planes striking ahead, radio coordinating it all at speed no one had ever seen. Poland fell in 5 weeks, carved up with the Soviet Union, which had secretly agreed to split it. In the spring of 1940, the lightning turned west. Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and then France, home of the largest army in Europe, collapsed in 6 weeks. 338,000 Allied soldiers escaped the trap at Dunkirk, rescued by warships, ferries, even fishing boats. By that summer, one democracy was left in Hitler's way: Britain. The invasion plan required destroying its air force first. All through the summer of 1940, the sky over England filled with fighters. The Royal Air Force, including pilots who had escaped Poland and Czechoslovakia, held. For the first time, Hitler was told no. The lightning had met a wall. What turned a European war into a world war? 2 gambles. Gamble 1, June 1941. Hitler betrayed his pact with Stalin and invaded the Soviet Union. 3 million soldiers on a front stretching from the Arctic to the Black Sea. The largest invasion in human history. He expected victory in months. Instead, his armies froze outside Moscow, and the Eastern Front became the largest, bloodiest battlefield the world has ever known. Gamble 2, December 7, 1941. Japanese aircraft attacked the American fleet at Pearl Harbor, killing over 2,400 Americans in a single morning. Japan hoped one crushing blow would keep America out of its way. It did the opposite. The United States, with the largest industrial economy on Earth, entered the war, and Hitler declared war on it days later. Now the sides were set. The Axis, Germany, Japan, Italy, the Allies, Britain, the Soviet Union, the United States, China, and dozens of nations beside them. The war was now truly global, and the Axis had just picked a fight with more people, more oil, and more steel than it could ever match. Behind the front lines, the Nazi regime was committing a crime with no parallel in history. What began as laws, then walls, then ghettos, became a system, built to erase a people. Trains ran on schedules, camps were built with blueprints, ordinary paperwork in service of murder. 6 million Jewish men, women and children were killed, 2 out of every 3 Jews in Europe. Alongside them, Roma, disabled people, Slavic civilians, prisoners of war, political prisoners, millions more. The world would come to call it the Holocaust. It was not a byproduct of the war. It was a goal of it. And it is the reason this war, more than any other, is remembered not just as history, but as a warning. By 1942, the Axis had reached its high water mark. Then, in 3 places, the tide turned. At Midway in the Pacific, American dive bombers found the Japanese carrier fleet and sank 4 carriers in a single day. Japan never regained the advantage. At Stalingrad, on the Volga, the Soviet Union bled the German army in a battle of 2 million casualties, street by street, house by house, until an entire German army surrendered in the ruins. It was February 1943, and it was the beginning of the long German retreat. Nearly 8 of every 10 German soldiers who died in this war died facing the Soviets. And in the West, the Allies built toward one enormous day, June 6, 1944, D-Day. 156,000 soldiers, American, British, Canadian, and more, crossed the English Channel in the largest seaborne invasion ever attempted and clawed their way onto 5 beaches in Normandy. Paris was free by August. Germany was now caught in a vice, the Soviets from the east, the Western Allies from the west, while its cities burned under day and night bombing. The end was coming. The only question was how much would be destroyed before it arrived. In April 1945, Soviet soldiers fought into the heart of Berlin. In a bunker beneath the wreckage, Hitler took his own life. On May 8th, Germany surrendered. In Europe, it was over. Japan fought on. American planners feared an invasion could cost hundreds of thousands of lives. And in August, the United States used a weapon no one had ever seen. One bomb destroyed Hiroshima. 3 days later, a second destroyed Nagasaki. Well over 100,000 people died. Most of them civilians, and historians still debate those decisions today. On September 2, 1945, aboard a battleship in Tokyo Bay, Japan signed the surrender. After 6 years and 1 day, the Second World War was over. 70 million people were gone. The Soviet Union alone had lost 27 million. China, as many as 20 million. Poland, 1 person in 6. Cities were rubble, and on that rubble, the survivors had to build a new world. They built it to make never again more than words. The United Nations, founded in October 1945, so nations would argue in a room instead of a trench. War crimes trials at Nuremberg, establishing that following orders is no defense. New rules, written into law for how human beings must be treated. The war redrew the map. Empires crumbled, new nations rose, and two superpowers faced each other across a divided Europe, starting a colder, quieter conflict. But the deepest legacy is the lesson. The Second World War was not an accident. It was built from resentment, fear, lies, and a world that looked away step after step until the steps became a march. Understanding how it happened is how we keep it from happening again. That's why we tell this story. Thanks for watching.